Welcome to Cut the Crop, keeping you in the know about everything you grow. Researchers, growers and other interesting folk delivering insights and information on topics ranging from agronomy to profitability. Brought to you by the Foundation for Arable Research.
Hello and welcome to Cut the Crop. I'm your host Anna Heslop, and today we have two guests. We have seed researcher Sean Weith from FAR, and we also have Nick Davies from AgResearch, who is involved with FAR through the CERC work. I rhyme. Anyway, this pair, Sean and Nick, gave a presentation at the ARIA Field Day around key weeds in ryegrass seed crops, and we're just going to find out a little bit about that now. So we'll start with you, Sean. Which was the weed that you were looking at?
So I was looking at Vulpia hairgrass. So I think the first thing I should sort of start off is that Vulpia is not just a problematic weed in ryegrass. It's actually a problematic weed in a lot of other monocrop grass species, so that could be cereals such as wheat and barley, but the main thing we're focusing here is on its control in ryegrass. It's a real problematic weed because it's generally considered a contaminant, so it can reduce the sort of seed quality, and through the pressure it exerts from competition, it can also reduce seed yield. So that was the main reason that we're sort of looking at focusing on it. Yeah.
And taking a grass out of grass crops is not always easy.
Exactly, yeah.
So are there any problems with resistance with Vulpia?
Yeah, so one of the problems that has been seen with Vulpia is that often you've got, if you have a cereal crop, that's often been treated with products such as Firebird, that's a group 15, and then if you're following in your rotation with ryegrass, you will often be using the most common active product you'll use is Nortron, and the active in that is ethofumicate. That's a group 15, and as a result you can almost be following very close together to group 15 herbicides, and that can really increase the risk of resistance. So that sort of is a reason why it's important to sort of look for alternative products that could be used to sort of break that, or simply try and find ways to and sort of change your rotations or stuff like that. Yeah.
So that's a good way to reduce that herbicide resistance risk.
Yeah, I mean, it's really, when it comes to actually general ways of controlling Vulpia, the best way and most simple way is it's actually managing your rotations and trying not to have, obviously, a ryegrass follow a cereal crop, but in the same time, it can also be trying to look at what you're putting into that ryegrass crop and maybe trying to avoid in the cereals putting on group 15, so not trying to follow the group 15s if possible. Those are sort of the general strategies that we recommend, but it's very, very hard because obviously those grass weeds are very prevalent and thus they're very essential in the toolbox for growers, yeah.
So it's about knowing your number for your chemical groups as much as anything else?
Yes, yeah. Yeah, and that's just a case of, obviously, some growers will be talking to the consultants, they may be the ones recommending, or it can also be talking to the chemical companies as well and trying to get the best recommendation for what fits best into their program and based on also the pressure of Vulpia they're looking on their properties, yeah.
Okay, over to you, Nick. So you were looking at weeds in a clover crop, and what was the specific one that you were focused on?
Specifically, we've been looking at a weed called small broomrape in clover. It's not so much an issue in the traditional way we look at it, but while it can have some effect on yield and that sort of thing, the issue is more around access to export markets and that kind of thing. So we've had it in New Zealand for a really long time, sort of as long as people can kind of remember. But it's restricted at field inspection and clover crops to particularly some South American countries, along with it's classified as a noxious weed in the United States. So seed companies, the way they've dealt with this in the past is they field inspect everything, and then they send the paddocks that don't have any in it that effectively pass the field inspection to the markets that have those restrictions. But it's slowly sort of moving through Canterbury, and they're finding it harder and harder now to find any paddocks without any of it in it.
So it's a real it's not so much a seed yield problem, it's more of that market access.
Yes, I mean, that's not to say it can't have an effect on seed yield, but it's not something that has kind of been a high priority for research in the past of really worried about it suppressing seed yield and things. But probably does suppress it to some extent.
Okay. So small broomrape, can you describe it? It's a funny-looking plant and it has a very unusual life cycle.
It looks kind of like purple asparagus.
It does.
So the reason it's quite an interesting plant and the reason it's such a challenge to kind of deal with is that it's actually a parasitic weed. So it's got extremely fine dust-like seed that's more like a fungal spore or something, but it is a plant. They are seeds. And they can stay viable in the soil for up to sort of 50 years. So once it's there, it's not going anywhere. So when the seed, when germination's triggered, then it attaches itself to the root system of the host plant, and it scavenges nutrient and things until it's got enough nutrient and energy and whatnot to emerge. And it emerges, and then quite quickly it goes to flower and it releases seed, and that gets buried back in the soil again until it comes in close contact with a host plant root system and repeats its life cycle.
So are there any plants that it is more likely to attach to than others?
Yes, there's a number that it will attach to. Our biggest one is our white clover and red clover seed crops. Kind of the interesting tangent to that question is that there's other plants, particularly wheat, which have been shown to cause it to germinate, but it can't attach. So that can help reduce the seed bank through time.
Okay, so if you've had a clover paddock that's had lots of broomrape in it and you're following, it wouldn't even need to be the next year with a cereal because those seeds are there for decades. They may, germinate but not grow.
Yes, particularly wheat, much more so than the likes of oat or barley, but also, to a small extent, ryegrass and that sort of thing. So there's quite a list. Oregon State University, there was a bunch of work done on it, and there is quite a list of varying degrees of germination without an infection that can be generated out of different crops, but none of it's 100%.
Okay, so going back then to managing it, how does that life cycle impact on the ability to control the weed?
This is where it gets difficult for everyone. So,
yay.
So because it's a parasitic weed, it doesn't have a lot of the systems that our herbicides attack. So it doesn't have any photosystems. So most of our herbicides don't, the thing that those herbicides attack and disrupt don't exist in it. Soil residuals and things don't appear to do very much because, again, it takes things through the clover plant. So you need something which translocates through the clover plant, through the root system, and into the weed. And you also need something that's not going to kill the clover plant, and you need something that's going to attack a system which actually exists in the small broomrape. So again, OSU did quite a lot of work looking for things that would help control, herbicides that would control in clover crops. They found one active, which is called a Mazamox. It's a group 2, and we don't have it registered here. We can't buy it. Overseas, sort of Australia, it's called Raptor as a trade name. We have something quite closely related called imazapythur, which is the active in Spinnaker, and there's now a number of different generics. So that is what we've started trialing to see if that will work.
And how's it looking?
So far, it's looking quite promising, but this is our first year running the trial, and it's only just emerged. So what has emerged has not been in any imazapythur treatment plots. It's only been in controls and ones that we didn't have high hopes for. But early days.
Early days. So you're also looking at some other work that's being done around small broomrape in Oregon.
Yes. So when a lot of this work was being done over there, they developed a growing degree day model for small broomrape, because something that seems to happen is if you apply your herbicide too late, which is anywhere near kind of emergence, then you don't get any control of it. So once it's emerged, then you can't control it.
Even with the one product that does seem to work.
Yeah, that's what they found. So they developed a growing degree day model where they could predict, and in their case it was growing degree days, I forget the base temperature, but from the 1st of January. So we just moved that to the 1st of July, I think the equivalent is. And in 2 years, it's done pretty well. Last year when we did it, it was about within a week it predicted emergence. This year it was maybe not quite that good, but it was sort of within 10 days or something. So that predicts a window where the herbicide will actually work, but it's a really large window. So we'll keep an eye on it and we'll keep looking at it. But the hope is that it will kind of become redundant and we won't necessarily need it.
And so it would become redundant because?
Oh, just because, well, for two reasons. The first is that the application window for herbicides is really large. So we think we can probably just sort of say like this window every year, unless it's a really extreme year, this window, if you can put it on then. The other reason is that last season, although we didn't have any formal trials, I had a number of farmers which let me go and look at their crops. So I went in every 1 to 2 weeks and just had a look at the growth stages of the broomrape, and it was still emerging and going to flower right up to desiccation. So we're going from kind of early November through to desiccation, and we're still getting emergence. And that window, if you applied it on the last day of that window, it won't be controlling what's emerging in late January or something. So while that was useful for them, and they developed that, I think, out of pot trials, and it can kind of give you the start of when you could. I'm not sure it necessarily gives you the end of when you can be controlling.
Because that short amount of time that each individual plant can be controlled is spread out across the whole population for a couple of months.
The model would suggest it's like a 6-week window or something most years, where that first sort of germination can be controlled. But yeah, I don't think that there's an end to that window other than that it's the end, it's your last chance to get it on to stop the first lot. But you're still going to get more later in the season.
So one of the interesting things about weed research, and you're both involved in this aspect of it, is that to do research on a weed, you need the weed to be there. So unlike everybody else in the arable community in New Zealand, you guys are actually trying to grow weeds so that you can control them. Sean, how's that working out for you?
Worked pretty well. Yeah, so we're doing a trial this year at Chertsey Research Site that was hand spread with 5 kgs per hectare of Vulpia, and that did very well to establish a really good flush of Vulpia, which has put a lot of pressure on the ryegrass that we sowed in there. So that was definitely a success, and it's really put a nice pressure onto the active ingredients that we're evaluating.
So 5 kilos a hectare, is that realistic to what a badly infested paddock would have?
Maybe in the most extreme circumstances. If you're looking at a headland, or like it could be around like a water hydrant, or like in a waste area and stuff like that. But generally you might, it's normally going to be limited more to headlands, maybe not in the main part of the paddock, but that's certainly getting to the sort of the high sort of pressure. Yes.
That's an extreme application to ensure that you've got enough to work with. Yeah,
well, we really want to have that. It's all about the uniformity, so that we're really getting to see a good sort of rate effect and treatment effect from the treatments that we're putting on, and that was the real main reason. And the other thing I sort of should have led at the beginning about the introduction about Vulpia is that it's actually got a very interesting sort of germination habit, where it actually really only germinates in from about 0 to sort of 1 centimetre in the soil profile. And often what will happen is when you have the shedding of the seed at the end of the season, once it's gone to, seed is matured, it'll often just fall onto the soil surface and germinate again. And so what we were doing with the hand spreading was to very much simulate a very, very, large sort of infestation, case study. And so that's sort of part of the reason that we were doing the hand spreading. We weren't drilling it into the soil profile. Yeah.
Just a lovely sprinkle.
Yeah.
And Nick, what about the broomrape? How do you get that established? Or is it, you're just lucky and it's there anyway?
I'd put that in the same category as if you want it to rain, we should do irrigation trials.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, Murphy's Law.
So last year, then when I was going around farms looking for it and just sort of keeping a track of how it was developing and going through the season to learn a bit about it, then I collected a bunch of stems that had set seed and just spread them around at the end of last summer when it would occur kind of naturally. But at this stage, we have no idea how successful that was. We were going to run a trial last year, but we just don't really have a build-up of a seed bank of it there. So,
but you did find it outside of your trial, though, didn't you?
Oh, this year,
Yeah,
then it seems to be around. And we did, I think we had like 5 stems or something in that trial block last year. Mm-hmm.
It's a bit of a risky business, isn't it? Trying to establish something there but that you know is going to be there just about forever once it does take off.
Yeah, and I guess that's one of the reasons to run it on FAR's field research sites, not in some...
Yeah. Hi, can we come to your farm and contaminate it for the next 50 years?
Yeah.
Probably not a best call.
No.
Oh, okay. Either of you, any other points that, you want to make around future trial work and what might happen going forward after this season's results?
If we get a positive result, then I think we need to repeat it and have a look. And have a look at some more chemistries, because at the moment, the only thing we've got there that we think might work is Mazepather, which is a group 2. It's a group which is known for herbicide resistance development. And it's it sticks around in the soil. It's not something you want to be putting lots of applications in.
Highly residual.
So, yeah, we'll be looking for other things. Where we even start on that, though, it's quite limited. So, yeah, there'll have to be some thinking on that. Mm-hmm. But at least if it works, we'll have something.
Right. And Sean, what about the Vulpia?
Yeah, I mean, this work's sort of not managed by myself, but by Matilda. But really sort of, our next sort of step will be we're going to take the trial we already have at Chertsey, which we did the hand spreading with the Vulpia. We'll take that through to harvest. And so we'll see how that all looks in the yield. One of the things is, we've got a couple of different products in there that, are quite expensive. So we'll just have to see how the margin of over cost sort of turns out. So
I'm going to put you on the spot here. Between heading towards a ryegrass harvest, is there anything that growers can be doing during that or post-harvest that is going to impact or help manage Vulpia for their following season?
Yeah, I think it'll really... The horse is probably bolted, but depending on the level of infestation, I mean, if it's feasible, roguing certainly could help reduce a bit of it. Certainly, if it's realistic, if it's really isolated to headlands, it could be the mow to get rid of the real dense parts of it. But yeah, I mean, as we've sort of seen with the work we were doing this year with the hand spread sort of trial, going early and going hard is really crucial. So I think that there'll be some really great results coming out of that annual report that I think will be really informative of the growers, so that I think they'll have a really good sort of program that they can potentially follow to sort of work. But as for this year, I think it's really just trying to manage what they can do, and it's just I think that there's only so much you can do with Vulpia.
Well, thanks Nick, thanks Sean. Growers, I hope you've had some ideas there, food for thought, and have a great day on the farm.
Thanks for tuning in to Cut the Crop, presented to you by FAR. If you'd like to know more about any of the topics discussed or have any suggestions for future topics, go to www.cutthecrop.co.nz.